Welcome to the Childcare Genius Podcast, the world's leading authority on childcare marketing, mindset, expansion, and profitability. Our host, Brian Dupre, is the world's most sought-after childcare coach, having helped tens of thousands of childcare owners from around the globe take their business to the next level. Let's welcome to the Childcare Genius Podcast, our host, Brian Dupre.
Welcome to the Childcare Genius Friday podcast series. So excited. I'm Brian Dupre, your host today. And I have the great pleasure of introducing my co-host today, Michael Braswell, one of our amazing coaches. How are you doing, Michael?
I'm doing excellent. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, you and I were talking a couple weeks ago about this topic. You had mentioned that you had seen it in my book and you had actually done this yourself and how great it was, and that you talked to some coaching clients and you know that they're struggling in this area. So I said, you know what, we're going to make a podcast episode out of this. So today's topic is talking about firing your bookkeeper for at least 6 months, if not permanently, right, Michael? Why do we want to talk about this today?
Well, you basically, when you start really digging into your finances, there's a lot of people that I coach that, are uneasy about their finances. They don't understand their P&Ls sometimes. They don't understand the cash flow statement, things of that nature. And one thing that I found is when you're knee deep in the trenches doing your own books every month, you don't really need to understand those reports because you've put everything together.
Yes. So I've been doing my own books for 30 years, never had a bookkeeper, right? So we did it all on, first of all, we were cheap when we first started. And I wanted to learn finance because it was my money. I didn't want to pay somebody else to handle my money. And you know the reason, Michael? I didn't trust anybody. I was afraid that they could take what little money I had back in those early days. So I kind of kept it close to the vest. I went through some financial courses, financial training, learned what a P&L, balance sheet, profit and loss statement. Like I learned all those things. And once I knew it all, I kind of liked it.
Yeah, it's actually a lot easier than you think it is.
It is. And you know what? One thing I found out I've coached thousands of people on finance. And the farther you are away from your finances, the more like I see people getting ripped off by CPAs, by accountants. I had a client recently was paying $2,500 a month for somebody to just do bookkeeping for them. And I know that bookkeeper is not working more than 4 hours a month, if probably 2. Because I have 3 companies and they all together, it's like 5 hours a month of bookkeeping. Everything's auto today. AI uses a lot of automated stuff. So I know this person is getting ripped off. And the less you know about finances, the more it seems you're apt to take an advantage of.
100%. In fact, I was always doing my own books until last year, with the coaching and everything else like that. I was like, you know what, to make my life a little easier, why don't I hire a bookkeeper? So I did hire a bookkeeper, and it came out to roughly, $1,500 a month. And I didn't realize how much of a disservice I served, how much I took away until this year when I just finished 2025.
Wow. So in my book, Childcare Multimillionaire, which you can get free on my website, childcaregenius.com. If you live in the United States, I'll even pay for the shipping. I'd love to get this in the hands of people. But nugget number 5 in this book, it says, fire your bookkeeper for 6 months. And it's on page 23. So if you have the book at home, open up to page 23 and you'll read what we're talking about here today. But the reason I wrote that nugget in that book was, again, so many people are so disconnected from their finances. One of the first questions I ask people when I start to coach with them, I said, how much was your net profit last year? If you get to me within 10, 20 grand, they don't have a clue. What was your net profit percentage? Again, they don't have a clue. And the only way they know how much money they made is they go back and look at their taxes, but they don't remember it and they don't know what percentage you're keeping off the top. And in next week, we're going to have another episode talking about making profit first. It's going to be this is a 2-part series. We're going to teach you how to keep it this week. We're going to teach you how to keep it through your bookkeeper. Next week, we're going to teach you how to keep it, which is a good line. So if you have a bookkeeper, Michael, and you don't know anything about finance, what's a good place to start? I mean, you can't just fire them today and do everything tomorrow because it's probably going to be a mess. What would you recommend? Like, how do you taper them down?
Well, I mean, first off, most owners, if you're not doing this at a regular basis, you should be checking your bank accounts on a regular basis. Just knowing where you're at all the time. And then understanding that you're actually understanding a segment of your cash flow that you don't even really realize, but you're monitoring those accounts constantly. So you're seeing what's coming in, you're seeing what's going out. You may not be really drilling into it, but that's what doing your own books does. So once you start doing the bookkeeping side, it's really just understanding what's coming in, what's going out. Because the only two things as owners that we can affect is either increased sales or cost savings. So I always approach it from a cost saving standpoint of knowing where all of my spend is going. And that's very important for all of us owners to know. So I always have everybody start with, go into your last bank statement, your last credit card statement, and create a list of all of your vendors and what you pay. Then find out if you're paying them monthly, is it a monthly thing or is it an annual charge? And then by understanding all of that, you also know when your point of renegotiation is, so you actually stay up to date of when to renegotiate with those vendors. I just renegotiated my dumpster contract, just because I went over the numbers and I was like, wow, it's increased like 300% in the past 2 years, and I could have, if I just had a bookkeeper, they're just doing a rinse and repeat
Yep.
every month. And
Yep.
so one thing, the other thing that I uncovered, my landscaper, we haven't had any growth down here, but my landscaper is still coming every 2 weeks and charging me. What are they doing? So that brings up another conversation I need to have. So as an owner, it's affecting how I spend and knowing what I need to drill into, what I need to talk to at that time. And if I have my bookkeeper doing that like I did in 24, I didn't have any data other than what was in there, and it was just a rinse and repeat. So it just gives you a much better sense of how your business is running.
And you know what? The bookkeeper's not doing anything wrong.
No.
They're a robot. They're exactly like AI. They're going to give you answers based on what the input is. You give them data, they file it, they put it where they think it goes, and that's it. They're not going to think, oh, that land, it's been dry in Texas. The land, what landscaping do I need? They're not going to think of that. And you have no idea what you're spending money on.
Yeah.
You just don't see subscriptions. You don't see recurring spend, and you don't know the money coming in. And all of a sudden, you're now like, oh, I'm short on payroll because you haven't been watching the bottom line and moving it. And it's amazing how many people have struggled in not getting payroll, like not knowing that they're going to make payroll that month. And the bookkeeper said, oh, you got to transfer money. Here's money here for personal here. And I'm like, you really need to get in touch with your finances, because when you know what you got coming in and know what you got coming out, you can make much more educated decisions. Um,
Yes.
that I think that's I think that's the biggest point, Michael, is I think if you don't know, it's like driving at night with no lights on. You might get there, but more than likely you're going to crash,
Right.
right? Same thing here, not knowing finances, you might get there or you might crash on the way. And it's like you're driving blind down the road, like not knowing. Now, once you know everything, then if you want to hire a bookkeeper, I'm okay with that. If you don't have time or just don't want to match, just make sure you're not paying them that much, because it's really not a lot of work because it's automated. You got to know it first because you can catch the errors. If they make a mistake, you're never going to catch it if you don't know your own books.
And I equate it to feelings over facts. So basically, I would rather have facts and the numbers. No, there we go. I'd rather have facts and the numbers than just feeling that I'm doing okay. I've got more money coming in than I've got going out. I guess I'm okay. I don't like that uncertainty. I would rather have straight to the facts. This is where I'm at. That's why we always, teach everyone, know your numbers, know your numbers. And that's why it's very important to even, I self-admittedly fell a little behind last year. Well, I was basing my decisions off of feelings. Now that I'm caught up, I can actually look at it and be like, all my decisions are based on facts.
Agreed. Michael, let's use a rule of thumb. If you're $1 million business, 1 million gross revenue, it's probably about maybe 3 hours a month in bookkeeping. Maybe not even that, maybe two.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 million are talking 4 hours a month. For every million, it's maybe 2 hours a month, right? Because with most programs like QuickBooks, everything's automated. So like when I get a charge in from my electric company coming in, it auto knows what account it goes to. So it automatically puts it there for me. I don't have to think about it. Well, right now, and most of the people who hire bookkeepers have to tell them where everything goes anyway. So you're
Exactly.
already doing the darn work and then paying somebody else to do your work for you. So if you're paying more than $200 a month for bookkeeping, probably getting ripped off. Now, granted, there might be a tax component. They might do your taxes into the year, so it might cost you a little bit more in that process. But try to watch as a rule of thumb, maybe 50, 60 an hour for a bookkeeper in some markets. And it's probably only 4 or 5 hours a month for most childcare business who are listening to this podcast. Now, if you got a $10 million company, you're probably a little bit more complex. You got a lot more to think of. You probably got somebody else who's going to be working 10, 12 hours a month doing your stuff. And I hope this was a guide. If you have any specific questions, feel free to reach out to me directly, Brian, Brien at childcaregenius.com. Be happy to answer every email that comes in. If you have specific situation, you say, hey, I'm paying $1,200 a month for a bookkeeper, and here's what they do. Am I getting ripped off? I'll be like, yep,
Yeah.
yep, more than likely. More than likely. And if you keep paying it, they're going to keep doing it. Because if I owned a bookkeeping company and somebody's paying me $1,200, work 3 hours a month, I'd do that all day long, wouldn't you, Michael?
Yeah. But I would also make the point, like you were saying earlier, about where to start, or, demystifying bookkeeping. I mean, bookkeeping isn't making it legal. That's what your CPA does. So
Yes.
what a bookkeeper is doing is just categorizing a transaction for you. And sometimes they get that wrong, but it's okay. The IRS isn't going to come after you for miscategorizing a transaction.
Right,
However,
100%.
so that's why don't be afraid to do your own books, because you know your business better than anyone else. So you're going to know exactly where those costs need to lie. So that's where it's just, you're doing yourself almost a disservice, because even from a backup documentation standpoint, for me, where every transaction that goes through, I have to have either an invoice or some kind of paper backing or electronic file backing.
Yep.
When you have a bookkeeper, they're not pulling all of that. They're just categorizing your charges. So we say you get audited, you're still going to have to go through the exercise of going and finding all that supporting documentation for the audit.
Yep. Yeah, they're not helping you with that. And you're right. They're just putting things in categories. Let's just say you bought $1,000 worth of food, but they put that into the daycare supplies column. To the IRS, one's a deductible expense, one's a deductible expense. It doesn't, it didn't hurt you in any way, shape, or form putting in the wrong account. But let's just say you filled your car with gas for personal use and you charged the daycare credit card with that. Now it becomes an issue where you use personal expenses you're mixing with daycare. That's where an accountant could give you the advice. Bookkeeper, if you give it to the bookkeeper, they're just going to charge it right to the daycare. If you know your finances, say, okay, this is a personal expense. It's a big, if you do some renovations on your home, you don't use the daycare card for it, right? Because now you're breaking the law. You can give it to your bookkeeper; they could do that. But again, this is what the CPA comes in. CPA keeps you out of jail. Bookkeeper has nothing to do with that, unless you're in a company that does certified financial accounting. Then a bookkeeper has a little bit more fiduciary responsibility. But probably nobody listening to this has that level of detail, and they've audited books. But a CPA will help you with that. Anything else, Michael, before we wrap up?
I would just say that, to your point that you just brought up, is extremely important, and most people don't, but those who still are, make sure you're not commingling funds. Make sure your personal is on personal, your business is on business. It just makes it so much cleaner, so much easier. You don't get a risk of being in trouble. So aside from the bookkeeper side, make sure you're running business expenses through the business accounts and your personal through your personal.
100%. Don't try to cheat on your taxes. If you get cash from your parents, I am telling you right now, the IRS knows how much you get in, because at the end of the year, they're all claiming it on their taxes for child care tax credit, right? So if yours doesn't match what comes in the old days, you can just, maybe the cash all didn't make it in, right? That was the old days. Now everybody claims it on the return. So if you got $1 million to come in, you're only claiming 800. The IRS knows you got $1 million coming in. So, and also, all these transactions over $10,000 are getting flagged normally by, the Patriot Act. So they're going to see a lot of money coming in and out. They know, the government knows how much, with AI today too. They're probably listening to your conversations in your house with Alexa and Siri. Oh, she probably just heard me.
Or this podcast.
Or this podcast, right? I don't have to worry about an audit because I don't do anything wrong. So don't cheat on your taxes. Pay your fair share. Just don't pay too much. That's what we kept saying. Don't pay too much. And so your CPA will help you with that. But know your books inside and out. Whether you fire your bookkeeper or not, you still need to learn. And I don't like seeing people get ripped off or pay too much for something. I'm kind of cheap myself. But I hope this podcast has helped you. If you have specific questions, send me an email at brian@childcaregenius.com. If you have not ordered your book, A Childcare Multimillionaire, you want to become a childcare multimillionaire, just go to our website at childcaregenius.com. Click the tab where it says books and look for a free. It says Childcare Multimillionaire, and there's order your free copy. If they're in the United States, I will send it to you free. I'll even cover the shipping costs. Zero risk on your part. And if you don't like it, I'll give you double your money back. Double of everything you paid me when you got the book. All right. And this is Brian and Michael signing off. Next week, we'll be back with another episode talking about how to keep more money and how to actually pay yourself. Talk about that too. So thank you, Mike, for joining me today. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you for listening to the Child Care Genius Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please do us a favor and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a future episode. Don't forget to visit our website at childcaregenius.com to see a list of services we offer to help grow your child care business. Until next time, thank you for being a part of the Child Care Genius community.